Good morning. I'm Ken Hirsch, the CEO of the Bush Presidential Center, and it's an honor to welcome you all here for this great event and a very important event. I also want to congratulate Tiffany and her staff on putting together an incredible agenda for yesterday and today. It's very complete, very important, and very thorough for a topic that is obviously near and dear to our hearts and something that's very important to the economy. And it's a pleasure also to give you a glimpse as to what the Bush Institute is up to when it comes to thinking about economic growth and why that is so important in today's context. President Bush gave us a mandate when we put the Bush Institute together, and that is, I don't want to be a think tank only. I want to be a think tank and a do tank. And we are policy driven, but we are action driven at the same time. So putting together conventions is fun, but putting actions in place is even more exhilarating. And so that's part of the practical solutions that I think this group is so important to convene around and to develop. And it's our goal here to continue the work that was started by President and Mrs. Bush when they were occupants of the White House, and then to carry on new work inspired by them and their values. And we do that by engaging the world, developing leaders, advancing policy, and promoting action to solve today's most pressing problems. We do it around a set of values. President Bush was known for one thing, and that was you knew where he stood. You knew he wasn't untrue to his own principles and his own barometer. And that principle-led leadership revolved around concepts like economic and political freedom, less government dependency, a strong and compassionate country at home and abroad. And doing it in a manner of civility. He was able to reach across the aisle on important issues and really demonstrated the best in what a servant leader is all about. That principled leadership never goes out of style. So thank you, President Bush, for leading such a great example that is ever more important today. The work we do is centered around three impact centers, as we call them: domestic excellence, global leadership, and our engagement agenda. If you want to be a great country, what do you want to do? Strong economic growth, great education, take care of your veterans, and develop future leaders. And those are the four initiatives we have in our Domestic Excellence Impact Center. Obviously, economic growth is the focus of today. With respect to global leadership, it's about global health, it's about human freedom and democracy around the world, and it's about empowering women. We can't advance globally by leaving half the population behind. And then engaging the world is about this great building, this great relationship with the university, and also our public programming and our publications. All of that comes together to achieve our mission. With respect to economic growth specifically, there's a lot of untapped potential for growth around the whole North American continent. And how we interact with each other is more important today than ever if we can get that policy right. More efficient supply chains, upgrading skills across the region, better integrated energy markets, and a more coordinated approach to regulation. Each of these would have their own important aspect to growing productivity. And that insight's the key reason we're so pleased to count NASCO among our strategic important partners at the Bush Center. And it's even more important, while I'm so excited that the President has said that it's something that he wants to be personally involved in. So without further ado, it's my honor and privilege to introduce the 43rd President of the United States.
Thank you all. Thank you. Please be seated. Welcome to the Bush Center. I hope you have a chance to look around. We're sure proud of this place. And I want to thank Ken Hirsch for leading it. The real key to make sure that this center, a challenge here is to make sure it exists beyond our time on Earth, and which hopefully is later rather than sooner. But at age 70, I'm beginning to see I realize I'm on the back nine, let's put it that way. And so Ken's job is to make sure we're relevant and the programs have got lasting impact to make our country a better place. I also want to thank Holly Kuzmich, who is the Chief Operating Officer in essence. that makes the programs work. I want to thank Matt Rooney, who you'll hear from in a minute, who's leading our economic growth agenda. With us is the former Speaker of the House of South Carolina and our ambassador to Canada, David Wilkins. David, good to see you. Yeah, give him a little, yeah. Everybody likes a nice round of applause. I also want to thank the NASCO folks, Ken Allen and Tiffany Melvin, for what you're doing and helping organize this conference. And it's what we're going to talk about is important, but before we do so, I want to get to the news of the day. Maybe some of you haven't seen the Dallas Morning News, but we announced yesterday that we have a new puppy in our family. So Laura and I went over to the SPCA to check out this really fine facility here in Dallas. And my advice, if you're not interested in getting a dog, don't go to the SPCA. And so Freddie has joined Bernie and Bob. Bernie's a cat, as is Bob. The adjustment hasn't been quite as smooth as we hoped. The cats are still somewhat irritated. Laura sends her best. She's doing great, by the way. She is a grandmother, which makes me a grandfather. And it's our life is great being grandparents. It's one of these things that's never overrated. Since I've seen some of you, and a lot of you I've never seen before, you just need to know I've become a sensitive artist. I paint. The reason I tell you that is I'm actually promoting a new book that I'm putting out. I painted the portraits of 97 warriors, all of whom were injured as a result of my command, all of whom are tremendous assets for the future of our country. Many of them are suffering from invisible wounds of war. And one of the things we're doing here, and I will continue to do for the rest of my life, is helping our vets transition from the military to civilian life. I tell you that only because I'd like you to buy my book. Now, having said all that, policy really matters to me a lot. I'm pretty much out of the political world. I'm interested in politics, but I don't think it's helpful for the country to have a former president criticize successors. It's a hard job to begin with, and I really don't think it helps to make it any harder. On the other hand, as Ken mentioned, the center is a place to work out passions and defend certain principles. And one of the passions is, how do we make sure that our country is economically competitive in the world, and that the people who live in America are able to get a good job at a good wage? I mean, you run for president because you care about people, and making sure the environment is right for investment and the environment is right for the growth of small businesses is an integral part of what it means to be president. And here at the Bush Center, we put out a book called The 4% Solution. In other words, what policies would help this economy of ours grow at 4%? It starts with an optimistic view about the American economy that we can grow at 4%. It's happened in the past, and it can happen in the future with the right kind of policies, which we believe starts with free markets and free enterprise. When the economy is stagnant, when wage growth is not prevalent in a lot of parts of any country, people become very frustrated. They become angry. They become frustrated in their lives. And that gets reflected in the political process. And I think that's part of what was taking place during this recent election. people were sick and tired of the status quo. And they are, insisting that leadership analyze what's right and what's wrong and do something about it. High taxes can stifle growth. Overregulation can stifle growth. But one of the things that's important for the people who are frustrated and angry, a lot of working people in our country, is that in order to close the wage gap, for example, trade is beneficial. It's beneficial to those who work on a regular basis. Here's one way to look at it. America is 5% of the world's population. In other words, there's 95% of consumers outside our borders who, if given a chance, might buy America goods and services. In other words, we live in a global world, and if I were a worker, I'd want to make sure that something I made had a chance to be bought, somewhere else. Of course, in America, but if there was a demand for the good or service, I would hope that the playing field would be level enough so that I can compete. I mean, one way for the worker to think about it is our leaders must have confidence. We can compete with anybody, anywhere. Our workers can, so long as it's fair. And so the job of a president is to recognize that trade encourages growth, and fair trade is important for the workers of our respective countries. Trade shows a confidence in our workers and in our business people, because trade really means we're willing to compete. And so the fundamental question is competition good for the American people, or the people in Mexico, or the people in Canada? Well, here are some things that I hope people consider. Workers in trade-intensive industries earn 18% more in wages than others in similar jobs. In other words, jobs where companies sell to consumers outside the United States, people get paid more. Secondly, small businesses benefit with trade. Now look, here's the key thing about America. Most new small jobs are created by small businesses. If you're interested in job growth in the private sector, and job growth in the private sector is necessary to achieve wage increases. You can't have wages going up if the economy is stagnant. And so therefore, if you want to deal with a stagnant economy, it's important to understand the importance of small businesses. Small businesses get overwhelmed by regulations. Small businesses can pay too many taxes and therefore less capital to invest. But many small businesses trade. They export and depend upon trade deals in order for them to be able to sell their goods and services. And finally, it's important for people in our country to understand that competition for their dollar means that prices will be more reasonable. In other words, if you've got suppliers competing for your attention, one way to get that attention is through quality. Another way is through price. It's in our interest that we have people selling in the United States to compete with the U.S. consumer. And so many argue that consumers benefit because the purchasing power of the consumer is increased by about 30% as a result of trade. And so here are some reasons people need to think about it in a positive light. Now look, I understand anger, and some people might have been angry when I was president. But anger shouldn't drive policy. What needs to drive policy is what's best for the people who are angry. And how does that benefit people in our country and in the countries in the neighborhood. The other thing that's interesting about trade, if you really analyze it, trade and investment drives technological innovation. I remember when I was the governor of Texas, there weren't a lot of people developing apps. In other words, there was a like kind of old style trade. And all of a sudden, the world becomes innovative and it changes. And the dynamic changes of how people make a living. And that's important to recognize. In an innovative driven world, there is a lot of change. Now, again, I understand that the transformation of our economy creates angst. And the fundamental question is, what do we do about it? And deny reality or adjust. I think it's in the interest of the working people that we adjust. I remember going to North Carolina. It used to be one of the leading textile manufacturing states in the country. Competition was such that a lot of those trade jobs disappeared, and it was very painful for a lot of people. But an interesting thing took place. Workers who were displaced received help in training for new jobs. And North Carolina diversified, and they became a high-tech hub and a hub for innovative health care. And workers were helped to better understand those jobs which paid more. And so the question is, are we going to be a dynamic economy or a stagnant economy? I think we ought to be a dynamic economy. And a lot of it centers on helping people understand the realities of the world in a positive way. The NAFTA, I know, is like, somebody said NAFTA is a 4-letter word. No, it's a 5-letter word. I remember as a kid growing up in Texas and going down to the valley, the Rio Grande Valley. It's like going into a third world country on both sides of the border. I would urge people to go down to the border now and see how transformed the border is. There's a thriving middle class on both sides of the Rio Grande River. It's in our interests as a nation that be the case. There have been 30 million new jobs since NAFTA has been created. And, we're at an interesting moment about, do we build on the strengths or not? And our group here believes we ought to build on the strengths. A strength for our respective countries is the willingness to work together. Canada, Mexico, and the United States. People say, oh man, how can we possibly compete with a emerging economy like China? We're doomed. I don't know if you hear that in Mexico and Canada, but occasionally hear it in the United States. We can't possibly survive and compete against this giant, resource rich country with a lot of people. And the answer is, of course we can. Of course we can. And we can do it better when we work together. So one of the things we do at the Bush Center is we analyze how we analyze our market as if, in compared to Canada, and we do well. Now, there's areas that we need to improve, and that's what Matt Rooney is going to talk about today. How can we better work together? How can we partner together? One of the things that's important to understand is that the United States workers, the Mexican workers, and the Canadian workers work together to make products to sell to the world. It's a win-win-win. Like, we're not pirating from each other. We're working together to be more competitive in an ever-changing world. And that's what we're going to do here at the Bush Center, is how do we make sure that we benefit the workers in our respective countries by collaborating, by being partners. Here's some examples for you, too. about what I'm talking about. So Learjet's a big American brand. They had economic problems. A Canadian company, Bombardier, came in, saw potential, and partnered up. And Learjet is doing well. Canadian capital saved U.S. jobs in this example. We've got some folks here from Scarborough International, Roger and Jeannie. Look, these are classic small business owners. You know, they had an idea, willing to risk capital. They've discovered that being a small business owner is not easy. And they have built and are building a mid-sized provider of shipping and warehousing to customers all throughout the Midwest, many of which are asking them to expedite trade with Mexico. In other words, small businesses manufacturing products that Mexicans will buy, and this small business's job is how to make it easier. In other words, how to help these jobs that these manufacturers are providing in America be sustainable. What's required to make your job better? And that's their job. And therefore, they're now in a position to employ people. And it's really important for the American citizen to understand that it's the small business person who oftentimes benefits from trade. The entrepreneur who, when he or she can find new markets and has got a good idea, is able to benefit. And so our question here at the Bush Center is, what do we need to do? You know, what do we need to do to kind of facilitate this alliance to benefit our respective peoples? And so you're going to hear from Matt Rooney, by the way, who's done a really good job of assembling a very strong group of people, all interested in thinking strategically about the future. And we're coming up with some constructive ideas. This is just the beginning, by the way, of doing our part to enhance the economic vitality of our neighborhood. When Mexico is strong economically, America benefits. When Canada is strong economically, American benefits. And as America benefits, those who work hard for a living benefit as well. And so I want to thank you very much for your input. I want to thank you for your interest. And we look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you.
All right, well, we have a special gift for President Bush, but there's no time to give it to him, I've been told, so we're going to skip that part. But obviously, we want to thank him so much. It was a great honor to have him here. He made, great remarks, and we're so proud to be working with the Bush Institute and be on a member of the Bush North American Working Group, and to have you, Ambassador, here, and you, Mr. Hirsch. So it's a great honor for all of us to be here. So we're very excited about today. It's going to be fantastic. My job is to introduce Matt Rooney. Everyone has the book. You've got his bio. I actually don't have my papers because they were taken from me when I went backstage with the president. So I'm just going to speak from the heart, and I mean this very much. But Matt came into our NASCO life about, a year and a half ago, when he came to the Bush Institute and began the North American Working Group. And we met very quickly and realized that we had a lot of common objectives. And I see Matt all the time. We work very closely. We're very close partners. He's an amazing man. He's brilliant and funny and smart. Brilliant and smart. That's good. But we're really happy to have him here. He's going to introduce the new kind of updated North American scorecard. So thank you, Matt. And I guess coming up, and we'll continue the day.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that introduction. I guess I'm glad my wife's not here after that, but thank you. And thank you all for your attention this morning. I think just over a year ago at you all's meeting in Windsor, I had an opportunity to brief this group briefly on the beginnings of our North America initiative, our North America scorecard. So it's a pleasure to be here today to present the updated version of our competitiveness scorecard, to present a new database of analysis of how the economic integration process in North America works and has benefited all three partners, and also to outline briefly the practical recommendations for competitiveness of North America that the President alluded to a few moments ago. So let me just say, as the President mentioned, here at the Bush Institute, we believe that North America is the cornerstone of the global competitiveness of all three of our nations. And as we've developed our program over the last year, it's been a pleasure, as Tiffany alluded to work very closely with NASCO on this project. And so what we have here is our scorecard. If you have a look at our website, you can find it there under bushcenter.org/scorecard. And this initial view, which is kind of big, I don't know, is it possible to make it smaller, or are we stuck with that scale, Nick? There we go. So this initial view of the scorecard makes our basic case, which is that North America is the single most competitive trading group in the world. Today we have an updated version of this database, which has new data from this year, and it reiterates the point that this is actually a highly competitive regional economy. You can see that we outcompete our friends across the Atlantic in the European Union. We outcompete the APEC group. We outcompete the Pacific Alliance group in South America, and obviously the Mercosur group in South America. If you go to the overall score, you can see that. So if we look at this combination of measures of openness and competitiveness and freedom that we've compiled to create this scorecard, we think it offers some unique insights into how countries compete for investment and jobs and innovation in the 21st century. So as we look at the North America baseball card to look a little more closely at the composition of our score, you can see that our group, the North American group, as a group scores higher than 2/3 or more of the countries measured for its business environment, for its legal system, for its investment environment, for its trade environment, but we're a little lower on macroeconomic environment. And in fact, if you slide back and forth across the years, you can see those scores. I thought they changed over time as you slide back and forth across the years. Anyway, they do. And you can see that while the US and Mexico have declined a little bit on macro environment, Canada's been stable since 2007. And if we can look at some of the individual dimensions. I think it's in about the grade there, isn't it? And you can see that some of the declines in business environment have to do with the deficit spending that has accumulated in the United States over the last number of years, and as the President alluded to earlier, the increases in business regulation. So as we looked more closely at the data in the past year, it occurred to us that when we look at these average scores for competitiveness, we're not really looking at the question of trade and investment flows among the countries. We're just looking at an arithmetic average of these scores. So we wanted to look at economic integration, and to do that, we assembled a new database. In this case, it's an original database. It's actually a unique approach to looking at this question of economic integration. And this lets us look a little more closely at how trade and economic growth and job creation and investment interact. So this initial view makes the basic point that we try to make, which is that even as trade among the North American partners, which you see there on the left-hand side, has grown from around $600 million a year in 1990 to over $1.5 trillion a year in 2014. It's an increase of $1 trillion per year. Even as that has taken place, North America's trade as a whole with the rest of the world, and the US trade in particular with the rest of the world, has increased by a very significant margin. The US trade with the rest of the world has increased from around $1 trillion a year, has almost doubled as you can see in the blue space there, from around $2 trillion a year to $4 trillion a year. So for a $1 trillion increase in intra-NAFTA trade, we get a $2 trillion increase with the rest of the world. That, to me, is a very significant result because it shows that even as the North American integration process is taking place, our ability to compete on the global economy is actually increasing. Now, North America's percentage of global trade and in the United States' percentage of global trade has declined in that same period, largely because of the rise of China as a trading partner. But this gross increase in trade, $2 trillion a year in additional economic activity, is nothing to sneeze at and represents some 10% of the U.S. economy. So that's a significant benefit that we gain. We can also look then at how GDP has grown during the same period. You can look gross GDP or per capita GDP. We can look at job creation. As the president alluded to, there's been a significant increase in jobs throughout the North American space. The United States, as he alluded to, has added on net 30 million jobs since NAFTA was created. Mexico has added on net jobs. The Canada zone there is a little flatter, but Canada also has added jobs on net. In other words, when NAFTA was passed, in all three partners, there was concern about job loss as a result of the trade. In fact, all three partners have gained jobs following NAFTA. We'll leave to our friends in academia to investigate whether this correlation indicates causation and which direction the causation might run. But it seems fairly clear at a minimum that the ability of the United States in particular and our NAFTA partners in general to grow and to produce jobs and to trade with the world has certainly not been harmed by our economic integration process. So thinking about these numbers, both the competitiveness numbers and the integration numbers, as the president alluded to, we invited a group of thought leaders from across business and government and academia from all three countries together for a series of structured discussions here most of them here at the Bush Center. We did go on the road. We went to San Diego and Tijuana, and we looked at the integration of energy markets there, and we looked at some innovative cross-border infrastructure projects that have taken place there. And we also went to Detroit and Windsor and looked at the very close integration of that cross-border community. And we asked this group to help us analyze missed opportunities in NAFTA. Where are there opportunities for growth that NAFTA, for whatever reason, does not tap into? Some of those thought leaders are here with us this morning. I want to thank them all for their insights and for their perspectives over this past year and a half. And the paper that we roll out today and the presentation that we make here today is informed by those discussions. But the recommendations themselves are fully the responsibility of the Bush Center, Bush Institute, as we developed and refined those discussions. In a nutshell, we believe that the core challenge for North America is productivity. It has grown too slowly and has failed to support rising incomes. With this in mind, we propose two basic strategies for boosting productivity. A North American strategy to enhance the skill base of our workforce, and a joint mechanism to promote market-driven development of cross-border road and rail infrastructure. Our workforce initiative is built on a partnership of companies, certifying bodies, and training institutions who are working together to identify widely applicable skills and promote training based on those agreed criteria. The idea that we have here is to enhance the productivity and competitiveness of the whole North American supply chain so as to boost household incomes and strengthen our middle class. There will be a panel later on the program that will explore these issues in greater depth. On the subject of border infrastructure, this is a highly complex challenge because of the numerous jurisdictions that meet at our borders. And as odd as it sounds, certainly it sounds odd to me, North America lacks the ability to plan and prioritize and invest in border crossings in ways that meet the needs of our manufacturers. So our proposal is that the governments should jointly capitalize a facility that would catalyze private investment in these big-ticket items like bridges and highways, with the result of relieving public sector budgets of a significant burden and making the planning and execution of these projects more transparent. One of the things that came out in the analysis that we carried out is that, although it sounds counterintuitive, financing is not always the main impediment to building border infrastructure. In most cases, it's actually possible to identify financing when a project is economically viable. As often or more frequently, the issue that impedes the process is objective information on which to base financial models. As a result, one of the key roles that we envision for our proposed facility would be to analyze and model traffic in the North American economy. This would enable projections, which in turn would support setting priorities for investments in border crossings. So with this in mind, we're working to build a network of universities and think tanks to develop and sustain this modeling capability. And our friends at the Jim McNatt Institute for Transportation and Logistics Research at the University of North Texas, based not far from here in Denton, Texas, are here with us this morning and are playing a leading role in getting that initiative launched and up and running. We think that by making our border crossings more efficient, we would also enhance productivity of the supply chain, again, supporting rising household incomes and strengthening the middle class across North America. There's obviously a lot that could be done to use our North American partnership to spur job creation and growth and prosperity. We have a historic opportunity, for example, to become the global leader in energy production in North America. And by the same token, there are many missed opportunities for closer cooperation among regulatory agencies to overcome minor differences in product regulation that can add significant cost to manufacturing. I think we still have different standards for jelly beans between Canada and the United States, don't we? It sounds ridiculous, but it's true. So as we go forward in the coming year, the Bush Institute's North America program intends to work further on these ideas, particularly in the regulatory area and in the energy area, and make additional proposals in the coming months. But we believe that the proposals that we present here today would lead to significant increases in growth and global competitiveness and go a long way towards strengthening the middle class skills and incomes across the North American space. We look forward to continuing to work with all of you to further develop these and other ideas, and in particular to work with our governments in all three countries to encourage them to pursue and embrace these ideas. I think that together we can strengthen the competitiveness of all three of our countries to the benefit of all of our citizens. I thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you today and for your attention, and hope you enjoy our website. Thanks very much. Oh, is that for me?
This is a gift.
That's for me. Thank you so much.
Yes. Just to clarify, I was not hitting on Matt. Probably upon further reflection, I should have said that he's extremely dedicated to his job. He truly loves North America, and in addition, he makes it fun to work with him, which is a big bonus, so that's probably the better way to phrase what I just said. Are we moving straight into the next panel? Okay. All right. Another man that is dedicated to his work and also makes it fun is Premier Brad Wall. So that was a nice segue I didn't even know I was making. What I do want to point out from his bio is that Brad Wall was first elected Premier of Saskatchewan in November of 2007. His government was re-elected in 2011 with 64% of the popular vote, and in 2016 with 62% of the popular vote, the highest percentages of any political party in Saskatchewan history. And when you see him up here on the stage with these other distinguished gentlemen, you will realize why. He is a beloved premier, and I'm so excited to be able to work with him on the Bush North American Working Group and to have him here today, so I will turn it over to him to introduce the rest of your panelists.
Or do you want me to take a seat right away? Okay. This is on. Good morning. Welcome to the best plenary session of the conference. somewhat hyperbolically named Living the North American Dream. It's an honor for me to be here. As Tiffany mentioned, I'm from the province of Saskatchewan. For those of you who don't know, we're sandwiched between the Western Canadian provinces of Alberta and Manitoba. For those of you who were at the Competitiveness Initiative meeting last year here, you will have heard me tell the story to orient the group to Saskatchewan that presidential candidate Adlai Stevenson was in Saskatchewan and toured around there years ago, and after some observation and travel, he noted that Saskatchewan was actually a lot like Texas, quote, except friendlier to the United States. We have a great panel discussion here coming up. Now, I'm going to provide some introductory remarks briefly, then we're going to hear from each of the panelists. Then there'll be perhaps some time for some questions, discussion here on the stage, and then we're going to open it up to the group, to the broader group, and have you out of here by shortly after noon. So again, thanks for being here to all of you, and welcome.
Thank you.
The theme, Living the North American Dream, is interesting to me. I was reflecting on it yesterday when we were flying down here. We have 3 kids. Our middle child is an aspiring singer-songwriter. He was apparently writing songs while he was supposed to be attending class at the University of Saskatchewan, and they had a mutually agreed departure sometime last year, but we have tried to support his desire, his dream of being a singer-songwriter. Now, the music that his musical preference, it's a niche preference. He writes basically folk, or really Americana music, or at least traditional country, not the kind of music that perhaps is in commercial favor today. But he has had some good fortune, and he's had some good luck. And recently he's signed a publishing deal with a company out of Los Angeles, a pretty good publishing deal. And recently he got a recording deal out of another group in Nashville. And he's been touring all over, but guess what? The market for his kind of music in Canada just isn't there, not enough to make a living. Because in this day and age, as you will know, in the music business, you're not making a lot of money selling your product. You're not making a lot of money on downloads. I think Apple takes about 80% of every download, and the artist might get 20, and he's got to share it with his label and others. And so it's really back to the future in the music industry. Artists are making their living traveling and doing shows, or going basically gigging and selling their merch. For him, the market's just not there in Canada. So we've actually had a chance to talk about things like NAFTA in integrated markets because basically he understands he's in a business. He's made his product, and he's found out that the market for that product is bigger somewhere else, and he would like it to be really easy to access that market, as easy as possible. And he's found that by and large to be the case, and that's what's opened up this chance to talk about trade, especially in light of the U.S. election that's just happened and the talk of NAFTA. Because he's kind of been interested in that U.S. election and has asked for the first time, what is really NAFTA all about, and why doesn't Trump like it? And so, his story is one of really somebody that's living the North American dream. It's not on the scale of perhaps larger businesses or medium-sized or small businesses. He's very much an entrepreneur, but he has an understanding now, and probably has had now discussions with his peers and friends about, I know that he has, about the travails and the problems of traveling across North America and trying to sell his wares. For example, it's still very difficult to get an entertainment visa in this country from the United States. Easier if you're a U.S. artist in Canada, but there are barriers that he's experienced, as well as there have been great opportunities. As a result of all of this, as a result of this opportunity that he has in the United States, the chance to live his dream, there's also a much better chance that he will be moving out of the basement soon. And so for his mom and I, it's a little bit like living the North American dream as well. I know that Tiffany, I think yesterday, talked about how on a panel about how all trade is local, and we discussed it on a panel that we shared on the initiative meeting that we had a year ago with Enrique. And I hope to do that today. I hope we can hear from the panelists how they might describe the North American dream in a way that we can make it very local. because we're going to have, we have an opportunity now to engage with North Americans, especially younger people who are at least interested in the subject. That's my optimistic view of what's happened in the U.S. election, and so we need to take every advantage, every opportunity to have that discussion, to show people that that trade is very much local, that it means something very important to them, that a North American trade zone, that integration is much preferred to what the options might be for want of a trade deal. And so this is a chance through this panel discussion, I think, to describe exactly how we can all live the North American dream and keep living it. I'm just going to get all of the bios out here. So, Alfredo Duarte, president of Taxco Produce of Dallas. From very humble beginnings, Taxco has grown rapidly over the past 30 years and is now the largest importer of Mexican produce to Texas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma. The company lists more than 1,000 restaurants, stores, and food outlets among its customers, ranging from small restaurants to the Four Seasons. We're going to find out a little bit more about Alfredo and Taxco in a video just prior to his presentation. Welcome Karine Goyette, Executive Vice President of CAT Incorporated and a fellow Canadian. CAT is a family-owned and operated company established in 1978 to serve the truckload requirements of businesses shipping between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. CAT has grown to become one of Canada's top 25 for-hire carriers. It operates its specialized logistics division, CAT Global, which represents more than 30% of the company's business activity. CAT is headquartered near Montreal, but the company has offices in Charlotte, Memphis, Columbus, Laredo, and Dallas, and apparently looking to expand possibly to Mexico. And we're going to hear more from Karine a little bit later on. Mike Berry, welcome Mike, president of Hillwood Properties and the newly formed Hillwood Urban. Mike leads development efforts at Alliance, Texas, an 18,000-acre private-public partnership that includes residential and commercial space, as well as the global logistics hub with intermodal rail yards and the world's first industrial airport, so it says. Hillwood is based in Texas, but is active across the United States and in Western Canada as well. I think there's some business operations in Calgary, perhaps. So we are going to invite each panelist to make a bit of a presentation. We'll begin with Alfredo, but first, I think we have a video to watch.
The AEM DFW is proud to present the Entrepreneur of the Year Award 2016 to Alfredo Duarte, a Durango, Mexico native who immigrated to the United States at a very young age. From very humble beginnings, Alfredo's story is inspiring and true evidence of tenacity and determination.
Yo nací en San Pedro, en Guanaceví, Durango, en la mera sierra de Durango. Y vivíamos de ordeñar unas cuantas vaquitas y el queso que hacía mi madre. Mi madre era la maestra de un pueblito como con 30 casas que había, San Pedro. Y pasé otro año en Durango y es cuando me vengo ya, que digo yo, estamos muy pobres, muy pobres, hay que irnos a Estados Unidos. Y me vine un poquito en contra de que mi papá quisiera dejarme venir para acá, pero me vine de todos modos y crucé la frontera, llegué con familia a Tijuana, cruzo a San Diego y llego con una tienda a Los Ángeles.
Alfredo has accomplished amazing goals in the business arena while keeping his humble spirit and noble heart. It was 1985 when Alfredo Duarte and Jesse Mendoza formed a partnership to start a company that could satisfy the growing need of Mexican produce in the Dallas area. Working together, Alfredo and Jesse soon turned their idea of being a small produce distributor into a competitive vendor to dozens of clients.
Mirando yo el potencial y la falta de negocios que había en la área, empecé a decirle a Jesse, a meterle la semillita dentro de él, oye, nosotros podemos hacer esto, debíamos de aventarnos, debemos de empezar una compañía.
Empezamos a trabajar, no teníamos dinero, pues lo que no teníamos era miedo.
Era algo de no tener dinero, de ir de un cliente a otro, agarrar el dinero para ir a comprar la mercancía del siguiente.
Pero luego, como ya crecieron los clientes, ya teníamos 15 clientes, ya nos dilatábamos mucho en ir a llevarle la mercancía y tuvimos que contratar un chofer para que fuera él por nosotros.
In just a few years, Taxco Produce grew from being a small produce enterprise located near the Dallas Farmers Market to becoming one of the leading companies in food products distribution, servicing over 1,000 restaurants, food stores, and food outlets in Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. Today, Taxco distributes more than 5,000 products and is the leading importer of Mexican food products in the area.
Si nosotros necesitamos X producto y ellos no lo tienen, lo consiguen, lo traen de México o de donde sea, de California, pero ellos están allí lo que necesitemos.
La relación que tenemos con Taxco la veo por muchos años por venir.
Ellos han crecido con nosotros. Ellos nos han ayudado con todo lo que nosotros hemos necesitado, todo el producto que necesitamos.
Alfredo Duarte is an entrepreneur that leads with passion and love for his community. We admire his enormous efforts in favor of a better education and better opportunities for our children. In addition, he is involved with numerous nonprofit organizations that make efforts to preserve life and heal children with cancer. On behalf of its membership, directors, corporate partners, and executive board, the AEM-DFW is honored to present the Entrepreneur of the Year Award to Alfredo Duarte.
Thank you very much. It's really an honor to be here, and thank you to NASCO. And yeah, there is a story to tell there, and so I'm going to begin just how we came to this country. I mean, we were really poor. We realized that. And it was not very many opportunities in Mexico for somebody that didn't have any education. I didn't graduate high school, so I made the decision to come in the United States and came across the border illegally into LA, and we worked really, really hard. I got married when I was 19 years old to her, my wife, almost 40 years now. And then finally in LA, I realized that the competition for the jobs were really hard. We decided to move to Dallas, where my brother-in-law, which is my partner, live here. And I worked a couple of years in 2 jobs, and I saw the potential that if we started the company, the service, our community will be okay. And so I sold that idea to my partner. He had 8 kids and making a lot of money at the time in his job, and somehow I convinced him to quit his job. That's kind of crazy. And so, you know, and so we started the company and worked really, really hard through the years trying to save the money. We didn't draw any money out of that company. Everything went back to the company and reinvested it. So it's what it become nowadays. We serve a little over 1,000 counts, and that goes Oklahoma, Arkansas, and we go as far as Kansas, and all the North Texas to the Panhandle and the Ojart and everything. So it's a big territory, and it's continued to grow. It's growing every single year. We're growing. We have certain guidelines. We work hard. We treat people with respect. We give them what they want, and we work for them. We make sure that my people that work for us understand that the most important people are customers, okay? And that is about the company. Now, 50% of the products that we sell and then here in the States comes out of Mexico, Central America, mangoes from Brazil. We bring some carrots from Canada at times. So they're from all over the place. And the other 50%, they're products here in the United States. So, you know, pretty much it's across everywhere. So NAFTA really helped us. In 1985, when we started the company, it was just the beginning, and we had problems bringing the stuff over here. You know, when they broke the deal bringing avocados, that solved so much of our problems with avocados. Before, we used to pay $100 a case from avocados from California, and in the wintertime, that was not a good thing. It wasn't gonna grow. And now we sell tons and truckloads of avocados coming from Mexico, and the competition is great for everybody. I mean, we need, the way I see it, and a lot of people that my friends, is that we need to integrate not only Canada, Mexico, and United States, but America. This is the only piece of land that we share. You know, this is America. This is, the United States is not by itself here, Canada or Mexico. We need to become strong as a continent, you know. And obviously, for the United States, I think it will be a great advantage to them to have a great Mexico in the South, and peace, making money, making a better life for all their constituents and the people down there. It's imperative. That's a big door in the South to the United States. So a lot of the things that are going on right now, I don't really understand them. I think a lot of it's ignorance and the people that are not ignorant just playing a game. But we need to be careful and really integrate this continent to really make a front to China and the emerging economies in the East. But I'm not an expert on that, and I'm not going to get into much, but it is how I see things. And so my business continued to thrive over here. We continue to grow. It will be very interesting to see where we're going to go from with all the things that are happening right now. I'll give you a little story. Across the street from us right now in the warehouse that we are in, Pilgrim Pride had a plant there. About, I don't know, 8 years, 10 years ago, immigration came in, took 400 illegals out of there. For the next 2.5 years, they tried to replace those people. For the next 2.5 years, I was a good friend with the superintendent there. Every single day, they hire people, 80, 90, 100 people, and every single day they lost on that. 2-3 days they were gone. They didn't want to do their job. You know, and it was a 3,000 employee plant. Within 2.5 years, they closed it down. Different things, but they can never got those people back. 2,500 people, American citizens and illegal people in this country, lost their jobs in the community. That is not acceptable. There is always going to be room for people to do those jobs. You know, a lot of the immigration now is different. I understand that there's a lot of educated, wealthy people coming to the United States from Mexico and all other places in the world. Before, it used to be the rural areas. People like me, they didn't have no education at all. You know, and came and worked hard in the jobs that we get. And so we never suffer. If we wanted to work, we worked really hard. And we found jobs. And so I hope that we really work hard to integrate this continent, not just the 3 countries, but the continent itself. I think it will be a great advantage to us. And I understand Canada, United States, I know some of the culture and things that we need to work in Central America and the South, but we're working real hard about it. I think we're making a change. I think we're going to be okay. Be patient. We are a little bit behind, but we'll be there. So thank you for the opportunity, and great to be here. An honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Duarte. Karine Goyette, bienvenue.
So good morning, everyone. Before I start, I just want to say it's an honor to be here today to talk about the North American dream. Before I start, I guess as much as our company has been involved with the United States and Mexico, we also in the family live the North American dream, having a stepmother from Mexico, a brother-in-law from Memphis, Tennessee, and a partner from Laird, Saskatchewan. So I'm going to start. I'm just going to give a brief overview of who we are and what we do. CAT stands for Canadian American Transportation. It was founded in 1978 by my father, Daniel Goyette, and both my sister and I have been working in the business for more than 20 years. We are both part of the succession plan. We started the succession plan, again, a long time ago, but more seriously about 3 years ago. And the goal was that our father was going to retire in 3 years. And every year, he will retire in 3 years. So we're located just outside of Montreal in a small town called Coteau-du-Lac, which is in the province of Quebec in Canada. We have 12 offices across Canada and the United States, and also have some presence in Mexico. We service the North American market, as mentioned. We service the full truckload, the less than truckload, intermodal, and warehousing. We have an expertise in time sensitive and also in temperature control and shipment across the United States and Mexico. So we have, just go back here. So we have offices, as mentioned. I'm not going to name all of them, but we have a few offices in Canada and the United States. We have an operations that offers a personal customer service. Our goal is that we always try and service the customers in the areas where we have offices to offer a more local feel to the type of service we can offer. We offer 24 hours, 7 days a week operations support, guaranteed capacity and multi-fleet operations. We have an on-time service of 99.3%, and I'll explain that a little bit later in more details. And we also provide EDI capabilities. So we have two companies. The first one is CAT. It's the asset side of our company. We have 350 trucks, 100 of which are natural gas trucks. All our trucks are equipped with vehicle telemetry, GPS tracking. We have the electronic logging device for drivers as well, and the collision mitigation system. We also have 900 trailers, out of which 725 were renewed in the last year, so they have an average year of a year old. And we have a driver onboarding and training program and a low turnover. So here is the services, the areas that we service through the United States. The presence we have in Canada is mostly in the province of Quebec and Ontario, and 95% of our freight crosses the border. So we don't service much of the Western Canada with our assets division. So the states in red are the areas we cover with our own assets, and the whole map, basically we cover all services with our logistics company. We have a presence in Mexico, as mentioned a little bit earlier. So we have sales agents in Mexico. We're very strong in the automotive industry, delivering tires. So we service multiple locations in Mexico. Our trailers cross, and we have different agreements with Mexican carriers as well. On our logistics side, we always had logistics, part of our company, and 4.5 years ago, we decided that we wanted to separate the two to grow and offer more services to our customers. So in those last few years, this division has grown quite a bit, and it will, by the end of this year, be as big as our trucking company. We have about 10,000 carriers approved to haul freight, and we pull multiple shipments every year in different transportation modes. We also offer an intermodal service, which has been fairly new. We opened up the Columbus office in January of 2015 with someone who had 25 years experience in intermodal, and we have different agreements with the different railways in the US. One thing that I thought would be good to talk about, and this is what has differentiated us quite a bit in the last few years, is our CNG fleet. CNG stands for compressed natural gas. We we partnered up a few years ago with a Ryder for the tractor lease, as well as Gain Clean Fuel for the natural gas. So we had 100 trucks that were delivered in January of this year that were put on the road throughout the last few months. And the reason why we went with natural gas were, obviously there were many reasons. But first of all, it's a lot cleaner, greener, less emissions. There's a long-term effectiveness to that as well, less equipment necessary. And for drivers, it's been a winning solution as well, with the smell not being as bad as diesel, and also the vibration of the truck. So I can talk a little bit further about that later on. And lastly, we have different accreditations. I thought I would mention those. We were named last year as as one of Canada's 50 best managed companies. And about a month ago, we also received the Carrier of the Year Award in Leadership for SmartWay. Thank you.
Yes. Merci. Mike Berry.
Well, the title of today is Living the North American Dream. I feel like I'm truly living the North American dream, having an opportunity to stand at the podium that President Bush stood at just 30 minutes ago. What a great honor to have him with us today and to hear his words. And as a fellow Texan, I have I'm especially honored to be here. I'm Mike Berry. And we've had a long association with NASCO. We've been members, Tiffany, for a long time, I think. Steve Becking, my associate, is continued to be very involved in NASCO. So once again, appreciate the opportunity to be here. My story will be a little bit different. What I want to talk about today is the development and evolution of what became and what is today a very unique inland port project for North America that hopefully parallels a lot of the principles and things that you're talking about today, because these are things that we truly believe are critical to the future of the country and the continent. I do want to say, in the interest of full disclosure, I might be the poster child for it's not what you know, it's who you know, because the founder of our company, Ross Perot Jr., and I were fraternity brothers together in college. So when he began this very visionary program to develop the Alliance Project, which, as the Premier mentioned, was founded as its core to build the world's first industrial airport, I was very fortunate because of our friendship and relationship to be asked by him to join the team at the very beginning. And it's been an incredible journey for the last 28 years. But we have grown our corporate platform from the base of the Alliance development. Now, over the last 2 decades, we've now become more of an international developer of logistics facilities beyond the borders of the U.S. We're now in Canada, as the Premier mentioned. We're also in Central Europe and Poland and Germany. And so we're learning about how to take some of these core ideas of logistics and distribution and supply chain and carry that to other developments that we're doing around the country and around the world. One of the key foundations of our company is building on public-private partnerships. Really, everything we've done at Alliance Texas was built off of creating partnerships, infrastructure partnerships with the federal government, the state, and the local governments. And so we have tried to look for opportunities in other places around the country to also carry that model of public-private partnership, and we think it's very important as we move forward in developing infrastructure, particularly here in the United States, that you have to have a public-private partnership to make these big projects happen. I will move through kind of the locational attributes of Alliance and talk about some of the key infrastructure elements. But we're here in North Texas. We're just west of DFW Airport, about 18,000 acres. That land was assembled in fairly large pieces over time, but what launched the development of the whole program was this idea to build an airport that would serve the needs of industrial users as opposed to a traditional commercial passenger type airport. And that idea was helped by a very unique partnership of the city, the FAA, and our team at Hillwood. And if you fast forward 25 years to see what is on the ground today at Alliance through those very visionary public partners and some of the opportunities that came our way, you now have over $8.4 billion of investment in and on the ground, almost 44,000 people coming to work there every day. The corporate roster is as varied as you could imagine. It's not just focused in one sector or another. It really shows the power of trade and infrastructure and supply chain and what you can do with the infrastructure that supports that in terms of attracting and creating a wide variety of jobs. So talk about here's just another view of the economic impact. Talk about the partnership that came together. This is what the land looked like in 1988, so some time ago. Most of you probably don't know this area, but you're looking from the north to the south towards Fort Worth. The whole west side of the North Texas market was a big wheat field. Through that partnership of the FAA, the city of Fort Worth, and our team, along with many, many others, we designed and built this airport to really serve the needs of industry. And from the beginning, it has spawned what is now that 18,000-acre program that I talked about, and very little of it, quite frankly, is geared towards aviation and airport and the related development. And the reason it's not is because we were given some opportunities to expand the platform, particularly our partnership with the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway and our partnership with the Texas Department of Transportation. So we built two other major pieces of infrastructure in the form of State Highway 170, which linked DFW Airport to Alliance Airport, and that alone, along with all of the other pieces of infrastructure, helped create the home to the companies and the diverse industry cluster that you see here on this map in one of the big pieces of the project called Alliance Gateway. The third big piece of infrastructure, which really changed our program, was the partnership with the Burlington Northern Santa Fe to build their intermodal hub, which anchors the western edge of the Alliance Texas development. And that probably more than anything changed the pace of development for us because it gave us a direct link to the ports, particularly the West Coast ports. So a huge amount of the volume that we saw was Asian-driven through the West Coast ports. But beyond that, the links that it helped us establish to feed product north and south, Mexico, Canada, and throughout the U.S. Really changed the whole mix of activity and allowed Alliance to be known by many as a true inland port. So what started as an industrial airport grew and expanded well beyond an industrial airport concept to become truly a multimodal transportation and supply chain center. And that has spawned now even more types of development. Corporate headquarters are now coming in to take advantage of the infrastructure and the services and the amenities and the capabilities. And you see some of these on the map: Deloitte, Charles Schwab, Fidelity Investments. And it's also helped us create a huge mixed-use community center, which includes residential, retail, healthcare, education, et cetera. So that idea and that vision to partner with the public sector to create a fully integrated platform that would allow us to create jobs in multiple industries has now transformed into what is a completely mixed-use community.
Thank you very much, Mike. To all the panelists, these are inspiring stories about sometimes from an individual perspective and the others from a business perspective. I think Ross Perot Sr. said, if you see a snake, don't set up a snake committee, kill the snake. I think that application for us today is that there is a urgency now around the protection, the preservation of this vital arrangement that we have, this agreement, NAFTA. And I think that we need to engage from a hearts and minds perspective. We need to act and directly engage at a micro level, perhaps, like my clumsy example to open up with Coulter or our son and his age group, but also with many in this country who are clearly not comfortable with at least the stereotype or the perception of NAFTA and what they think it might have done to the economy in this country. And so this is my question to each panelist. It's the same one, and maybe it's a bit unfair. I perhaps should have given you all a heads up as to what the question would be. But acknowledging the fact that by and large there isn't the same angst about NAFTA in Canada or in Mexico, that the challenge is here. Do you have a story, a personal story of perhaps, or maybe just a general story of your own experience, of your own businesses, that you would want to share with, let's say, an American voter who has real concerns about NAFTA based on what his or her understanding of it might be, to assuage those concerns, to provide some comfort, even a positive example, a very positive example, I hope, of why NAFTA has been good to a group or even one American citizen that you perhaps employ or deal with as a supplier. By the way, I think that's the ground level of this debate. That's the kind of engagement we need. We need to be able to each present these very compelling examples, small and large, as to why this arrangement is vital. And so I'd ask each of you maybe to canvass one or two of those examples that you might share with a fellow American citizen in the case of many in the room who has concerns about NAFTA.
I don't have a specific story, but I'll tell you what I think is most important, and it's been touched on throughout the day, and that's the job creation that has resulted at the macro level since NAFTA. We have, you saw some of my slides there. There's in many of the companies that are on that map, and many of those 44,000 jobs that are on that list, a significant portion of those happened because of the activity that was happening, not just east and west through the Alliance program, but also north and south. Automotive suppliers, GE Transportation, consumer goods suppliers, Zenith, for instance, fed product up from Mexico into Alliance, where they consolidated and completed appliances and white goods for distribution and sale in the United States. GE Transportation makes locomotives at Alliance. 17,000 parts go into the making of that locomotive. A number of those parts come from Mexico into the plant at Alliance, make the finished product, and then it's sold in the United States. So I have seen firsthand countless examples of the integration and creation of products and value, and more importantly, the creation of jobs from the enhancement of product flow north and south.
Do you think there's an awareness then of, say, amongst your employees or their families as to how so much of that is made possible by the dynamic integrated relationship that's represented in the North American Free Trade?
Probably not as well as it should be made aware to the general population. I have an opportunity to speak a lot about workforce, because we're very involved in workforce development initiatives, training programs, partnerships with our community colleges, partnerships with our school districts, and trying to feed people into the workforce directly to take advantage of these opportunities. We probably don't talk enough about why those opportunities are there. We talk more about how do I get you skilled to take advantage of those opportunities.
And I just would say that that's the opportunity that is before each and every one of us right now because of last Tuesday. now that, I mean, NAFTA is in the news in all three countries, and it's on Coffee Row in all three countries. And now we can bring to bear some compelling local examples. The province of Saskatchewan, for example, is the second least dependent of all the provinces in the Dominion of Canada on NAFTA for its exports, and 56% of our exports go to the United States and Mexico. And we're the second least. And it's probably out of sight, out of mind in right across our country, notwithstanding the fact that every other province, except for one, would have an even greater dependence. So now here's the chance to start talking about it with people, I think.
I'll tell one funny story. Mr. Perot Sr., when he ran for president in '92, one of his big platforms was that NAFTA would create the giant sucking sound, which you all remember. So here we are building the Alliance industrial platform and trying to create industrial jobs around this industrial airport and rail hub. And a company that had been a maquila company, Valmont Electric, so they had operations on both sides of the border, decided to move a significant part of their operations up into the more central in the U.S. market for distribution and efficiency and pick up market share. And so they established this operation at Alliance. It was a fairly small facilities, maybe 40,000 jobs, 40,000 square feet, created maybe less than 100 jobs, but still a big operation. Forbes magazine was doing a story on Mr. Perot Sr. at the time, and they looked at Alliance as a real contradiction to because they had focused on this Valmont Electric and said, so why is this company, a maquila company, moving into Dallas-Fort Worth and adding jobs? And I said, well, I can't give you a good answer to that, but I'm glad they did. So.
Yeah. Karine?
I guess on our side, the biggest issue in transportation is finding the drivers. So having the NAFTA agreement on the border crossing for drivers and for transportation companies has been a huge help in the last 20 plus years. Just in the last few years, there's been changes at the border, and there's still some change to be made, but there's a lot more consistency between the process within Canada and the United States and the United States and Mexico.
I mean, so you're saying there are drivers, American citizens working today for your company that may not be able to have that job if it weren't for some of the improvements at the border and some of the realities of the arrangement that our three countries have.
Yes, that's correct.
Do you ever have some sort of a corporate or company discussion about some of these things? Or perhaps now might you be given the election and the fact that NAFTA is very much on the radar?
Yeah, it's a concern for sure, especially that we have presence in the United States. We've had a terminal in Laredo, Texas for the last 25 years. So the exchange and our operations is so intertwined between the three countries working together that if there were to be any changes, it would be a lot of work to reevaluate the way we would do things.
Alfredo?
Yes, well, my comment goes back to numbers. Numbers tell the story. The data is there. I mean, when we buy trillions of dollars of merchandise in China, and the components that we put together here and send over there, and they send them back over here, it's 9 cents in a dollar, and then you go to Mexico, and it's all these numbers you probably already heard about them. You know, it's 40 cents, and then Canada, 30 cents. So at the end of the day, who's the best partner? I mean, the partners are close by us here. And it's an advantage to have healthy countries as neighbors. That is very, very, very important. And so I don't know why it's actually, a lot of it is ignorance. They touch, I don't want to call anybody ignorant because I might get in trouble here, but you know, I think they should get a class in at the high school level and put the numbers down and explain why we need to be partners with Canada, Mexico, and the rest of the continent. I mean, it really is sad that we're discussing this in a very negative way, the way I can hear some things. NAFTA benefits everybody. America is not by itself here. The United States is not by itself. It's you know, there's a continent. We need to start thinking in the continent, you know. And so it is very important. I don't see ourselves changing a lot of it because the benefits are there. The border it has been benefited so greatly. I mean, and go to Laredo and look at what is going on in Laredo. Go to McAllen and all the produce comes to there, you know, and goes to Mexico. We sell to Mexico a lot of beef, a lot of meat, pork, chicken, and everything.
Yep.
So, I mean, we need to be more conscious of the way we talk and everything, and I don't know what they're going to do with NAFTA, but I hope they don't do anything. I mean, it's working. Mm-hmm. It's working.
I think those who might oppose NAFTA or free trade in general are much more effective, though, at using anecdotes. They're much more effective at presenting a young person potentially, or maybe a long-time worker that they would say has lost their job as a result of NAFTA or as a result of some trade agreement. And I guess my point is this, Alfredo. I think those who advocate for things like NAFTA, for freer trade, for greater integration, we do need the numbers, and we have them on our side. In fact, they've always been on our side, right? Almost from the onset of this deal. The numbers have supported us. What I think we need to do, though, is speak more to the hearts and minds of people. I think we need each of us as employers and those of us in elected positions possibly or in government positions to find those compelling examples of people who are working today, individuals who are working today that would not be otherwise working, or who are healthier today, who would not otherwise be as healthy as they are. Pick the story. I think that we need to be very disciplined about that. You know, as free traders, I don't think we always finish the sentence. And what I mean by that is that, you know, the end of the sentence is how does it benefit people and families? We sometimes stop at GDP and surpluses and deficits and the trade imbalance, and that's all very important. But I guess my point is that I hope each of us can find those examples and use them in our daily discussions and our discussions with people who are diplomats and elected people as well. I want to also just ask this question. I mean, there's, you know, our Prime Minister in Canada, shortly after the President-elect was, shortly after last Tuesday, indicated publicly that he would be willing to sit down and I guess talk about NAFTA if that's what the new President wanted to do. And notwithstanding strategic concerns around those comments, they were made, and I'm not sure what the President of Mexico has said or hasn't said on this front. But if there was to be a reopening of this, and I hope there isn't, I agree. I hope there is not, because there's much to lose. But if they were to reopen it, what would you advocate be changed for the better? You folks, especially from the logistics side, but also from somebody that's employing a great many people in the business that you're in, Alfredo, what would each of you propose to improve with respect to NAFTA that might make things even more integrated and easier to do business and easier to create jobs in all three countries?
Well, the first thing would be transportation. I think we have a lot of work to do there. Transportation, getting products faster, for me, produce fresher and everything. So transportation will be right high up there and be able to go across the border a little bit easier. You know, it's good right now the way we do things and everything, but it can be a lot better, a lot better. And one of the things that really changed all this and the jobs and everything is actually the way the information travels. It travels so fast that you can buy anything you want anywhere in the world. And actually, it's not bad when you can buy something in Bangladesh and put it over here in 48 hours. That is not bad at all. That's what changed the job market, too. It's not just the companies that move somewhere else. They have to move to be competitive in this world market. It's information. I mean, we didn't have that 40 years ago. Now we got it, and we have to deal with it and adjust to it.
Clary, is there anything you would?
I talked about consistency and the borders earlier. I think there's still a lot of work to be done for for Canada, the United States, and Mexico. The American Trucking Association and the Canadian Trucking Alliance, and I know Canada probably as well, they've been working on trying to change things in transportation to make it better. An example is electronic logging device. The law was passed this year to become mandatory for transportation companies to have electronic logging devices in the trucks as of 2019. But in Canada, the CTA, Canadian Trucking Alliance, has been working hard on making it mandatory as well, and it's going to come, but with 2 years delay compared to the United States. So when there's competition that comes into hand between the different countries, those things might affect it. If we talk about the border procedures as well, a few years ago, the United States improved the process of crossing the border with the ACE system. Back in 2007, if I remember correctly, and Canada did the same, but last year, doing almost the same program, but using different terms. So it makes it just a little bit harder for companies to learn the process, for training employees. So if there would be more consistency to that end, I think it would help quite a bit the companies.
Thank you. Mike?
Mine is really along the lines of transportation. It's a global infrastructure rethink. We're working constantly on Interstate 35, which is really our main arterial, and I'm talking like through Texas, but really through the entire country. It's our major connector. We have really poor rail connectivity into Mexico. I would like to, and then on the Mexican side, the rail infrastructure is not nearly what it is on our side. So I would like to see, in terms of if we reopen, relook at NAFTA, really from a positive standpoint, figuring out a way to fund infrastructure improvements all the way through the system, rail, road, and then the technology that could flow along those arterials.
We're going to open it up to some questions or comments from the audience for any of the panelists. Just before I do that, a couple of observations. I think Ambassador Dewar mentioned yesterday that an asset in all of this is we want to be both proactive and a bit defensive with respect to the trade agreement itself is energy. Alfredo, you sort of touched on it. We need to think as a continent and understand that we're competing with other parts of the world that are thinking like, at least regionally. The ASEAN is a good example in Southeast Asia. And obviously Europe is still, even though there's challenges, they're still doing trade deals as a union, as a European Union, Brexit notwithstanding. And energy, I think, is something that can bring us together. Energy security across North America, the integration, and of course we talk about all forms of energy when we're talking about renewables, but I'm thinking a bit more about oil right now. If you want a powerful political issue that will resonate, I think, in all three countries, it's the chance to be independent of the need for oil from places that cause challenges in other realms, in other ways. I was just on a campaign in favor of the Energy East pipeline across our country. I was in New Brunswick, Gary, and watched the Saudi Arabian ship unloading oil into New Brunswick, into Canada. We have the third greatest oil reserves on the planet. We have so much oil to provide all of our country and then export, obviously, and we're importing it because we have our own pipeline issues that we need to get through. So, but I just believe that if we were, and I'm glad that one of the recommendations of the initiative from the North American Competitiveness Initiative is on this issue of energy. I think there's a huge opportunity there. Finally, I would say to all of us, to NASCO and other groups, we have Ambassador Dewar here and former Ambassador Wilkins. Both of these gentlemen did great things for the Canada-U.S. relationship. I know it would be true as well for the Mexican ambassador as well. Softwood lumber agreement was finally solved in large measure because of David's work there, the president, President Bush. Gary, there's so many files you've been great on for our country, including the country of origin labeling. We need to really be watching who the ambassadors are appointed to Mexico from this country and to Canada, and understand that there's those are allies there's a huge opportunity there to make sure that some of the rhetoric doesn't manifest itself as policy and utilizing the great resource of the diplomatic corps of all three countries, but especially the new ones coming in this country. Questions from the audience? Sorry, I've gone on too long.
Premier?
Yeah.
I'm Wayne Elhart. I think you know that.
Wayne Elhart, yes.
This is
a colleague in the legislature.
And this is my favorite soapbox, and I'm glad to have an opportunity to talk in response to your invitation. We've had some confirmation in numbers this morning about the value of the NAFTA 20-year experience and how positive those numbers are. The media reports we hear almost always focus exclusively on the downside, on the job losses, on the consolidations, on all the bad news that might have come out of NAFTA. But the media and present company accepted, our political leadership, don't ever talk about the positive stories coming out of NAFTA. We need much more active and aggressive political leadership on this topic. And I think there's a little fear among political leaders to be identified too closely with NAFTA. Bad news sells newspapers and all the rest of that, and leadership sometimes runs from that challenge. So I would say we need more vocal support at the political level, for one thing. We need to be talking about the numbers because they are positive. But here's something else I think we might want to focus on, and that's the amount of economic activity that is being generated by the supply chain and the collaboration across borders. I think I heard the number just recently, and it should be confirmable. About 40% of the products that go across the border are going into larger products that are sent around the world. And so this isn't a trading partnership so much as a trading collaboration. And that is going to become a bigger and more important part of our economic reality as we go forward. That's a really good news story, I think. And it's one that we should be selling as evidence of the workability and viability of a NAFTA-type agreement.
Amen.
Exactly.
Right back there. Right back there.
I got it. No baby's coming today.
Premier, thank you. Roberto Salinas from Mexico City. I think the question about what to do as far as renegotiating NAFTA, these are all very good points, especially transportation, and considering that logistics has become such a key driver of competitiveness, not just in the region, but throughout the world. Those are all well and good, but especially concerning the tremendous fears surrounding the downsides of North American creative destruction, if you will. Could we possibly contemplate some sort of credible and reliable safety nets for the future that could salvage the agreement from being completely torn apart as far as using tariffs or non-tariff barriers in order to protect jobs and other artificial means that would do away with all those wonderful supply chains that are integrated from Anchorage, Alaska to Tuxtla Gutierrez in Mexico. There are just thousands and thousands of, just 3 examples here, but there's so much more storytelling that could be done. If we tend to those fears and we take them seriously and we build credible safety nets, I think there's several examples that could be considered as far as tax incentives for investment for displaced workers or regional unemployment insurance, something that protects you on the downside. That could be something that could possibly fortify the experience of a North American collaboration. I think we should also change the narrative, no longer trade between 3 countries or even partnership, but actually a regional collaboration. Thank you.
I really agree with what you said, but just consider this for a minute. That we become very protective of our jobs and bring back all the companies here. And we continue to pay $70 in benefits an hour to an employer to produce a car. I mean, good luck selling it around the world. You know, when we have Japan, we have Korea, we have all these countries selling cars to Germany. So I think we already together on this. I think that they need to see, again, as a continent, as partners on producing things to sell to the world. I mean, it's the way it needs to be seen. And it takes a lot of education. I am a great believer in education and getting the numbers up there. And there is thousands and thousands of people that come to this country or Canada and build businesses and become successful and everything. But also understand that those things are provided by a stable form of government and the institutions, the strong institutions. So I think we have to work together in order to sell that and keep those jobs there and also make happy the people over here, and they can understand that the economic growth needs to be in the whole region and the continent. I think as the information travels, it's pretty new, as fast as that's now. I think all of us kind of adjusting even to that, to a new world of business. And I think we're going to be okay. We will be okay.
Recent trade agreements, of course, have this feature. The CETA deal is a good example where the Canadian government had to make sure that the supply market, the supply managed agricultural sector in Canada, which was very worried about the deal, there were some mitigation provisions from the Canadian government for the sector to guard against or whatever economic dislocation was going to happen. Some felt very strongly about it. It's a feature of the deal. Here's the other thing. Here's the other observation I would make. Don't those exist on a de facto basis? I mean, we just referenced a couple of non-tariff related trade issues between the countries. They're going to happen, even with the NAFTA. There's dispute resolution then that's possible, of course, but that doesn't mean Ambassador Dewar is still not trying to fix the country of origin labeling thing with Mexican support, by the way. So I think some of that's going to, that balance is always going to be there, even though it's sometimes irritating to all of us.
Yes, speaking to the Mexican element of you having come to Dallas and that being where you started your company, could you speak to the environment in Mexico to start companies, and if somebody wanted to be there and receive the benefits of NAFTA as a business owner, what that might look like?
Well, we're talking now 30, 40 years ago, it was really difficult. Mexico, we still have a little bit of a problem in caciquismo. A few families control some of the businesses, so startups are hard. But then, in the last 10 years, things are changing and rapidly changing. I think we were really understanding the economy and a lot more people venture to form businesses. I think the government has a lot to do and facilitate and even to get a permit to open a business. Sometimes it takes 3 months or 6 months to get the paperwork. And that is not a good thing in this day and this world. Going back the way the information travels is sad, but we're working on it. We're coming a long way, you know, and I think we have a bright future, and we're going to integrate ourselves really, really good. There's a lot of opportunity down there. Obviously, if you go down there and you got money and got the idea and establish a business, you're going to be okay. You're gonna open up. It's more for the people, the local people, and the professionals to establish themselves. Still, in some parts, they're part like Monterrey, they're part like Jalisco, León, Guanajuato. Those areas, those clusters, they have become more like United States and Canada. They're real easy, but we still have some other states there. It's hard. It's very hard. But again, don't lose your hope. We're coming along, and we're coming along strong. We're going to be great partners, full partners with you guys.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the very inspiring talk. I'm Jamie Hammond. I'm from British Columbia, where 40% of our trade is already with Asia. And I'm just inspired by some of the things you said about how can we use NAFTA to do exactly what I think was in an earlier briefing this morning about how North America is competitive. We need to be competing against Asian companies. If there's an American business that's thinking of moving jobs to Mexico, for example, In a few years, it'll be much cheaper for them to move those jobs to maybe not China, but maybe India, maybe Vietnam, those kind of locations. So how do we take advantage of NAFTA to engage Asia as a bloc?
Well, first of all, we need to accept what we're doing here. We still have a lot of resistance. We haven't really embraced it completely. To really develop it and to become a force that helps us, this continent. And that is the first thing we need to do. We need to have a vision that this is going to be better than anything they bring to us. And as long as we don't get that clear, I don't think we're going to be able to. I think we're always going to be behind the 8 ball. You know, I think first we need to continue to be working and a vision of doing this better, integrating this continent. I really believe that is the secret, and then again, we need to work with governments in the South to become more pro small businesses and making it easy for people to start up things and everything.
Just going to kind of focus on China within the Asia bloc and some statistics I learned within the last couple of weeks, specifically focused on e-commerce. We've all watched the Amazon phenomenon and the e-commerce explosion. With this growing middle class in China, e-commerce, the growth rate of e-commerce in China versus the growth rate that we have here in the United States is exponential. In 2015, e-commerce sales in China grew 33% year over year, which was a multiple of the growth that we had here. And you know, the growth we have here is pretty significant. There are 489 million, my numbers may be slightly off. I don't have my cheat sheets in front of me, but give me a little bit of fudge factor. 489 million Chinese with handheld devices that have internet access. And there are almost 600 million, I think it's about 590 million, so another 100 million people, including those, that have internet access, say, at home. So handheld plus internet access, almost 600 million people. Almost double the US population. I mean, that's a huge consumer market for manufacturers of every product you can imagine already here in North America to grow into. One other fact, I think it's 60%, I may be off, but a significant percentage of those products that are being sold via e-commerce channels into China are currently not available in retail outlets in China, which means they're coming from us or they're coming from Europe, more than likely. I don't know how they're getting through to the Chinese consumers if the government hasn't allowed them to be sold yet in retail stores, but that just tells you there's a huge commerce flow of products unregulated going into China in a market that we all believe is highly, highly regulated. As that middle class continues to grow, and they are growing in China, and as the government structure evolves and has to respond, I think there's huge market opportunities there that we don't even realize yet. So we need to take that, we need to build on it. You got to dig into the numbers and figure out what's really driving all that, where it's coming from, who's buying. But there's a huge opportunity there that, you know, we're always on the defensive when we talk about China. But actually, we should be on the offensive. We should be thinking not about what we're buying from them. We ought to be thinking about what they're buying from us, because their buying power is rapidly increasing.
Well, I was just going to add on the same note, but there's we often forget about culture as well. The culture, I guess, on the North American side, even though there are different cultures and we can't take them lightly, the difference in the culture with Asia is to another level. So we've seen also more and more companies working with China on trade. We have ourselves a company that the products are made in China, and it's just getting to know how it works and understanding how they do things as well. So I think it takes time, but it's there are a lot of opportunities.
Can I? Can I? Yes, I'm
From
Mexico.
A voice from above.
Yeah. I like to share my vision of probably what's going to happen in the next year if the new elected president starts doing all of the things that he's going to do. He's going to damage the U.S. more than Mexico or Canada or China. Because if he attacks Mexico, I don't know if you heard the news last week that probably Blackstone or the big investment funds are saying that they're going to sell their positions on emerging markets and especially Mexico. That's going to generate a lot of sales of positions that it's going to devaluate the peso more. And it's going to be cheaper to manufacture in Mexico. So there's going to be like millions of jobs lost in the next 2 or 3 years. Yesterday, there was a news in Mexico on The Economist, the economics newspaper, that NAFTA, it could take him 4 years to negotiate NAFTA. And in that process, he's going to lose more jobs. And obviously, he's going to say that we're a currency manipulator, you know? But he's the one that is going to be the one to blame, because you're going to lose more jobs and more jobs. Obviously, tourism is going to be more attractive to go to the Mexican beaches and to all of Mexico or Canada. So at the end, all of this behavior of attacking others, I see that the U.S. is going to end up losing more jobs to other countries. I have a magazine that is specialized in industrial parks and in industry. And I've been studying the U.S. Advantages in manufacturing. And I really admire what this country has in the new Internet of Things and in new Industry 4 and all of the automatization industry. This country has the best position to compete. This country registers more than 300,000 patents a year. This country has everything to compete, and it doesn't need to have a fight with other countries. I think the United States needs to behave as a leader, like Mr. Bush said here. The United States, it's a world leader in industry and in exports and in everything. So probably this group, NASCO group and NAFTA, it has a very big responsibility on communicating all of these good things and what could happen to U.S. jobs if the President of the United States keeps fighting other countries to try to keep jobs in the United States. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen what the President wants to do. It's going to be the other way around. That's my vision. I don't know if you agree.
Thank you. I think the point you make about...
How about counterpoint? One of the things that I heard very early here today, and I think that we need to focus on, is a good vision and a good atmosphere and a good positive attitude about the future. This is starting to sound like things are going bad. He hasn't done anything bad yet, and the American people, and American business in particular, are very adamant about their freedom and about their ability to do business. They're not going to allow him to attack Mexico or anything else because they're dedicated to doing business. We, as this group, need to be not allowing the media to control what we think and put half points and fears into us. We're the ones that need to go out with a positive attitude that says we are going to conquer, we are going to work together. And if we decide to work together, neither the president nor anybody else can stop us from doing that. So we have to be the ones that go back and talk to our employees. We have to be the ones that go back and cast this vision of excellence and of working together and of thinking in terms of a continent. And if we do that, we can overcome the media and we can overcome any of these things and we can shape it. I believe it was Ronald Reagan, and I could be wrong on that, but said the government is a car. And we all love automotive, so this applies. The government's a car, but the people get to tell that car where to go and how fast and in what direction. And if we come out as a business community and we can inspire other businesses to join us and be positive and say what we want to happen and how we want things to work, we can shape them.
Right down here.
So Eric Miller, Rito Potomac Strategy Group. First of all, on the Asia point, since we like stories, one of the ways that things are going into China, I have a good friend of mine who takes Wisconsin-grown ginseng, sends it to Vietnam for processing because it's labor intensive, and is sold in China through e-commerce. Goes into the Shanghai Pudong Free Trade Zone and is distributed throughout China. The problem is that there are no North American companies with really good access to e-commerce platforms in China because we haven't seen the potential for e-commerce. And it goes to also TPP. What's been quite worrisome in my trips to Asia recently is the impact that the U.S. skepticism and perhaps inability to pass TPP will have on the standing in the region. And it seems to me that we need to particularly Canadians and Mexicans, work together to try to keep TPP alive until we find a way to bring the U.S. back into the fold. Because the U.S. is going through a political moment now. I think the logic of integration and of growth will be there, and there will be a path for the U.S. to be back there, but we need to find a way right now to show some leadership and not let this thing fall apart.
Your point on TPP is well made. In our country, the new federal government's sort of been a bit agnostic about TPP. They haven't they haven't come down on either side of it. I think that's fair to say. And so I think we all have some work to do if we're ever to get that thing back with a beating heart again. I think we have time for a couple more. Right back there, where all the action is.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Miguel Zamudio with Landry Commercial here in Dallas. My question is mostly for Mr. Alfredo. You're originally from Mexico. You're a first generation. I think we discussed earlier that the Mexican population here in the United States has been growing, and now we have second, third, fourth, fifth generations that have different tastes than first generation Mexicans. Also, they are also growing on purchasing power. My question would be, in view of these changes on the Hispanic population and on the fact that Hispanics are the fastest growing ethnic group in the United States. Right now, 16% of the US population, and it's going to keep increasing. What industries do you believe need to pay more attention to the Hispanic population to take care of that market better? And also, to give some ideas to Mexican investors and Mexican companies, hey, this is a great opportunity to invest now in the United States because of more growth in the Hispanic population, more purchasing power with the Hispanic population. What industries would you think needs to pay more attention to this trend?
Wow. That is a hard question because let me tell you something. We have a few challenges here. It's education. I mean, just take, for example, Dallas, Texas. It's going to be 40%. It's 40% Hispanic. That puts a lot of people nervous, because we still not graduating enough of our kids from college. So first of all, we need to get all those kids to go to college and educate them. And I mean, I don't know if we can pinpoint an industry. I think education will point those kids to what they like to do and what they find. I mean, for me, was selling tomatoes. And so be it. That's what I do. But I think our community need to diversify and not focus on any industry. I think that would be kind of, if I say go to a restaurant. No, I think, first of all, we need to educate our community. We work in real. I'm on 3 boards of different schools in Dallas, as some of you know. And my main point is to educate. Let's start graduating more kids from high school. Let's get them to college. Let's get them to start preparing themselves for better positions in the future to run the city of Dallas. Why not? That's weird. I mean, I came as an illegal to this country, but you know what? My son and my daughter, they're American citizens. I got 6 grandkids, American citizens. They don't know Mexico no more. And obviously, I'm going to raise some great American citizens with the roots of Mexicans. I don't want them to forget where their grandfather came from, but also, I don't want them to be just Mexicans in America. I want them to be American citizens. This is their land. So, just to answer your question, the challenge is, let's graduate them from universities and let them be whatever they want to be in the industries. I mean, every 10 years is an adjustment of things and everything, even in our lives. What's important 10 years ago doesn't mean anything to me probably nowadays, except family. So, I don't know, in 10 years, I don't know what the industry are going to be like. It's unbelievable what the way information travels has developed the world in the last 40 years. It's incredible. I never thought that I will see the things that I'm seeing right now. I'm not, I feel sometimes when I see my grandkids that I'm not from this world anymore. I don't understand. A lot of people think that young people, they're lost and they're wrong and everything. You know what? Have faith. They're the grand citizens of this world. They're going to be okay. They're going to be fine. I mean, I really believe that the future is on those young people. You know, so I don't know if that answers your question, but we need to invest in education in our communities.
I think it was the perfect answer to the last question. And I want to ask all of you to help me thank our great panelists, Mike and Karina and Alfredo, for their discussion today. I want to thank NASCO for the chance to moderate this. It's an honor to be here at the center, to be with these folks and with all of you. I appreciate that very much. I think if we could summarize the meeting, this particular session, we could probably do it by acknowledging the fact that each of us is aware at least of 3 dream stories related to the North American market. And there's every likelihood that all of you know many more stories like that. So we should tell those stories. To the point the gentleman made there, we should let our elected representatives know, but our neighbors know that there are these amazing stories that would not be possible were it not for the relationship that we have between these 3 countries, were it not for integration and NAFTA. And so I think that's a great takeaway for all of us. And if you want to help Tammy and I with the particular North American issue, Coulter will be at Lukenbach, Texas at the Thanksgiving Day Ball. He'll have his shirts on sale for $20. And you can get a CD on iTunes. Imaginary Appalachia. Thanks very much.
Okay, great panel. Love all the questions. Please stay engaged like this all day long. We've got a lot more where this has come from. I wanted to point out, too, that on the stage, we've got a wide spread of people that have been members or entities that have been members of NASCO. So Mike Berry mentioned they'd been members a long time. I think it's about 21 years. They're one of our almost founding members, if not a founding member. And I always like to joke with Steve that 21 years ago they joined. They're only about 28 years old now. And I shudder to think what would have happened if they hadn't decided to join NASCO 21 years ago. You may not be where you are today. So you're welcome. If anyone out there is considering joining and on the fence, take a look at these guys. This is what happens when you join NASCO for a while. And then we've got CAT Inc. is a brand new member. They're from Quebec, as she mentioned, and we've had a great time working with Guy and with Isabel, and you have a great team. They have a new office in Dallas, and so we've been working very closely with them, and we're excited to have them. And then Alfredo, sweet Alfredo, what you guys don't know is that he was invited yesterday and today and tomorrow for a trip to Rome to meet the Pope, because the Archbishop of Dallas is receiving an award from the Pope, and this man is now leaving to go rush to Rome, but he wanted to keep his commitment to us because he cares so much about our organization. So we thank you. And you can tell about his heart and soul, and we're so lucky to have him as a member. Then, of course, Saskatchewan, the great Premier Wall, and they've been members for about 7 or 8 years now, I think. So it's a good spread. So thank you, guys. All right, now we've got lunch at 12:30. It's sponsored by the state of Nuevo León, Mexico, and it starts, that's about 18 minutes from now, so you've got time to move over. It's in the Hall of State, which is out and to the left. And then we'll take it from there, I guess. So thank you guys very much.